good. Let them, we hear it either way, end or beginning, but it leaves them a chance to say something before we vote.
Yeah. Mornings are usually cool, man. Let's roll.
It's now time to call our meeting of the Bulloch County Board of Commissioners to order. I'd like to welcome the media and visitors. I would also like to remind everyone to silence your cell phones and other devices so that we may conduct the people's business without interruption. Commissioner Anthony Simmons will give the invocation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Bow with me, please. Dear Lord, we want to thank you this morning for waking us up, starting us on our way. Dear Lord, we'd like to ask that you continue to bless our first responders and the men and women that protect us each day without worrying about any politics, and they're just going out doing their job and protecting us, dear Lord. We want to ask, dear Lord, that this board makes the decisions that we need to make and which they're good in your light, dear Lord. Dear Lord, we just want to thank you for all that you've done for us, all that you will do for us in the future. These things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Miss Mincy White will call the roll for the commissioners.
I, Venus Mitzi White, present as clerk of the Board of Commissioners of Bulloch County, hereby call the roll for those on the governing body. All those present shall answer by saying aye. Chairman David Bennett.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Toby Connor.
Aye.
Commissioner Ray Mosley.
Aye.
Commissioner Anthony Simmons.
Aye.
Commissioner Nick Newkirk.
Aye.
Commissioner Timmy Rushing.
Aye.
And Commissioner Ray Davis. I've determined that we have all members of the Board of Commissioners present. Therefore, we have a quorum to conduct business for the good of the citizens of Bulloch County. I now yield the floor back to the chairman.
Thank you. Before I entertain a motion to approve the general agenda, do we have any discussion or modification desired by the county manager or the board? If there's no further discussion, do I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? We have a unanimous decision. Moving on to the consent agenda. First item, to approve the minutes from Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. Next, approve an amendment to the budgets for fiscal year 2025 by appropriating amounts and some funds for various activities. Approve the purchase for Lion Gear PPE PPE gear from NAFCO in the amount of $32,162. Approve the acceptance of a renewal contract from Coca-Cola to provide beverages for resale at recreation concessions to include athletics, Splash in the Borough, and the agricultural complex. Approve and ratify hauling services from JL DeRiso Trucking for the week of February 3rd through February 7th in the amount of $24,987.75. Approve and ratify the purchase of a 3,000-gallon tanker from Fouts Brothers in the amount of $498,407. Approve and ratify the purchase of a culvert pipe from Cherokee Culvert in the amount of $657.60. Approve a memorandum of understanding with Ogeechee Technical College to provide an adult education program at the Bulloch County Correctional Institute. Approve a bid from Playworks Playsets LLC for Mill Creek Park Playground resurfacing in the amount of $172,690. Approve a non-disclosure agreement with the Georgia Emergency Communications Authority. We can approve these items collectively, or we can move any item to new business for further discussion. Do I have a motion?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor? Is there any discussion?
Ms. King, I just got a question on number 2, just to clarify it. That's to formalize the bids that we've already done for all the hurricane cleanup, right? For the most part. I know there's a little bit left over for SPLOST, but for the most part, that's not adding additional money. That's just formalizing what we've already done.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay. And we do have a motion, correct, collectively? Okay, and a second. Now, all in favor? Unanimous decision there. Okay, moving on to new business. First item, it's going to be County Attorney Jeff Akins. Approve an amendment to Article 4 of Chapter 8 of the Code of Ordinances of Bulloch County, Georgia.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is more or less kind of a formality, and I'll just explain that Article 6 of Chapter 8 incorporates the Georgia Department of Public Health's rules and regulations governing the operation of body art studios and body artists, which is basically tattoos, body piercing, that kind of thing. These rules and regulations are administered and enforced by the Bulloch County Health Department. The reason that the rules and regulations are incorporated into a county ordinance is to provide the health department with another enforcement option, because the magistrate court has jurisdiction over violations of county ordinances, whereas without a county ordinance, the health department would be limited to administrative enforcement through the state. And we've had this in place for years, not only with this, but with some of the septic tank regulations and some other things. But the Georgia Department of Public Health recently revised the rules and regulations for body art studios and body artists, and therefore the ordinance needs to be amended to reflect those revisions. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions you may have. If not, I would recommend approval.
Mr. Chairman. May I speak?
Yes.
Mr. Attorney, who's going to be enforcing this for Bulloch County?
The health department.
The Sheriff's Department, code enforcement, who's going to be enforcing this regulation we're fixing?
Right, the health department will. I believe, is Marlon, are you here? Yeah. Marlon Thomas from the health department is here. Do you want to say anything, Marlon, about it?
The rules have already been in place. They were just changed and updated.
Sir, would you come up to the podium, please?
And you might want to explain who you are, Marlon, so they'll.
Good morning. I'm Marlon Thomas, Environmental Health County
Morning.
Manager for the Bulloch County Health Department. These rules have already been in place, but they were actually rules that were just introduced by our district. A couple of years ago, the state decided to come forward with a set of rules and regulations. And so to be more or less the same across the state, we adopted their rules. And to, have enforcement, we have to remove the rules that are in place and then place these rules into place. So that's the extent of it. We would do all the enforcement. We normally, when we have issues like this, we go out and write citations and take them to the magistrate court, and they would enforce fines and that kind of thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other?
I was just gonna state, just to kind of clarify that Marlon and them from the health department, any food service, septic tank truck, tattoo part, anything like that, they go and inspect them. Not the septic tank trucks, but food service on a monthly basis. If they find anything out of the ordinary, then they have to correct it or they'll write them a citation, and that gives the magistrate court the right to pass a fine or whatever. So they enforce it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is something that basically the health department takes care of. Me being on the health board in Bulloch County, we meet once a month, once every other month. So it's not a big deal. It's just something the state has put in place, and they take care of it. With that, I'd like to make a motion. We go ahead and adopt it, if that's all right with you, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous decision. Mr. Akins, looks like you're up again here for the next item. Approve an
sir.
amendment to sections 2-25, 2-26, 2-27, and 2-28 of Article 2 of Chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances of Bulloch County, Georgia.
Yes, sir. This is the amendment that was discussed a couple of meetings ago about the issue about moving public comments to the beginning of the meeting. And what I have done, you'll see it up on the screen. This is what I call a red line version, although it's also got some blue. Just to easily show the changes. The deletions are in a blue strike-through font, and then new language is in red font. So I took the opportunity to clean up some other issues or items in this ordinance. And the first change is in section 2-26, subsection D, which currently reads that at the first meeting of each calendar year, the Board of Commissioners shall announce for the record the names of the vice chairperson, county manager, county attorney, and county auditor for that particular year. To my knowledge, we've never done that. I don't recall ever doing that at the first meeting of the year. And we know who the county manager and the county attorney and the county auditor are, so I don't really see the need to leave that in there. Now, I did leave in, if you want to announce for the record the name of the vice chairperson. And the reason for that does rotate every year. Now, the board does not, you don't elect or appoint a vice chairperson. It rotates based on the particular seat. But if you want to, I started to strike out that whole provision, but then I thought, just to help for clarity, you might want to announce who the vice chairperson is at the beginning of the year. Does anybody have any particular feeling about that one way or the other? You just need to remember to do it if we're going to leave it in. Okay. In section 228, and I've done this several places throughout the ordinance, I just added a phrase because it says that all meetings shall be held in accordance with the provisions of OCGA 50-14-1 et sec. And I put, and as otherwise provided by law. And the only reason I put that in there, sometimes when you cite code sections, now that one's unlikely to change, but sometimes the code sections will change or no longer be applicable. So I think it's good to sort of have that catch-all phrase, and as otherwise provided by law. All right, section 228C1. That was apparently an error because there is no section 1-18, non-existent. So I changed it to the actual section that talks about executive sessions, which is 2-28, subsection K. All right. Moving on to 2-28 subsection D3. The second or third sentence there currently reads, a copy of the agenda and a list of those members present shall be made available to the public for inspection within 2 business days of the adjournment of any meeting. That, I think, was an attempt to state what the Open Meetings Act requires, but a copy of the agenda is not really correct. And I don't know why that was put in there like that, but what it really needs to say is what I've changed it to, a summary of the subjects acted on and a list of those members present. Somebody may have thought, and I'm not sure, I could have been the one that did this, I don't know, but somebody might have thought that a copy of the agenda basically is a summary of the subjects acted on, but it's not really, because I think what you need is a list of the subjects acted on and the action taken. And I think Venus is preparing that within 2 days of the meeting. So we have to do that to comply with the state law. All right, moving on to, let's see, subsection F2. I've changed that to reflect the practice that we follow. Currently, it says the minutes of the previous meeting shall be corrected and approved by the board at the beginning of each meeting. And I've just changed that to say the minutes of the previous meeting shall be placed on the consent agenda for approval, because that's the practice we've been following. Now, G, order of business, currently reads, all regular board meetings should follow an established order of business. The order is as follows. And I've changed that to give us some more flexibility, so that if the need arises to change something, you can do it. What I'm proposing, the order may be varied or supplemented by a majority vote of the board, but will typically be as follows. And then it lists the agenda, and you'll see the changes that I've made there. And this, again, is to reflect the current practice. So we begin with the call to order. Number 2, instead of minutes, that would be invocation and pledge of allegiance. Number 3, instead of invited guests, that would be roll call. 4 would be presentations. 5 is public hearings, and those would be public hearings other than zoning. And a good example is when you have a road closure, proposed road closure, that's where that would come. 6 would be zoning, if you have zoning. 7 would be reports from committees and departments. And then 8 would be public comments, and I put that right before the consent agenda, with the idea being, as you discussed a couple of meetings ago, that you wanted people to be able to comment on the agenda items if they want to, or they could talk about anything else they wanted to. So that's going to come right before the consent agenda. Then we have old business, new business, and then 12, which currently is public comments, we're changing to commission and staff comments. 13 would be executive session, if there's a need for one. And then 14 would be adjournment. And then skipping over to, let's see, G, I1, or no, G1, basically. That's the section, these two sections, 1 and 2, are currently dealing with public comments. And I've changed number 1 to say that instead of being the final agenda item, public comment shall immediately precede the consent agenda. All members of the public who wish to address the board must sign up prior to the start of the meeting on sign-in sheets provided for that purpose. Now, I've kept the 5-minute time limit. And again, these limits can be waived by a majority vote of the board. So that needed to be changed anyway, because it currently reads that anybody who wants to address the board must submit their name and the topic of their comments to the county manager at least 3 business days before the board meeting. Well, we obviously haven't been following that in quite some time. I'm not sure that, in my memory, I don't know that we ever followed it. But number 2, I struck out the public participation on agenda items, deleted that because arguably that's not needed anymore because people will be able to address the agenda items in the beginning prior to the consent agenda. Number 4, I did change that a little bit. I added or as required by law. On the board may schedule public hearings for the purpose of soliciting public comment on any subject of interest to the board or as required by law. And then I added that public hearings will typically be placed on the agenda immediately following presentations and immediately preceding zoning, but may be held, and then it keeps the language about may be held immediately prior to, during, on announcement, or following a meeting of the board or such other places, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and then moving over to subsection K1, that was sort of a grammatical, I pluralized executive sessions of the board may be held, and then I added or as otherwise authorized by law for the same reasons I've explained earlier. On subsection 2, I struck out the language about minutes because that was probably correct under a prior version of the Open Meetings Act, but it's no longer correct. Because prior to, there was a pretty major amendment to Open Meetings Act, probably 10 to 15 years ago, and prior to that time, you really didn't have to even have minutes for an executive session. And I think that's why it said minutes of the executive session may be maintained by the clerk of the Board of Commissioners upon a majority vote of the board. The Open Meetings Act now requires minutes for executive session. So I just took out the language in the current ordinance and I added language that's consistent with the Open Meetings Act, which says meetings of executive sessions shall be recorded, but shall not be open to the public. Such minutes shall specify each issue discussed in executive session. In the case of executive sessions where matters subject to the attorney-client privilege are discussed, the fact that an attorney-client discussion occurred and its subject shall be identified, but the substance of the discussion need not be recorded and shall not be identified in the minutes. Such minutes shall be kept and preserved for in-camera inspection by an appropriate court should a dispute arise as to the propriety of any executive session. And in-camera inspection simply means the judge reviews something in private in his chambers to decide whether it should be public. And those are all the changes that I proposed. I'll be glad to answer any questions and you also have a clean copy of this with the changes made that will be if you want to approve it, this would be what you're approving and that would be the exhibit to the minutes. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have unless there are any questions or comments.
Do we have any discussion at this time?
Mr. Chairman, got a question. I was going back looking at some previous agendas. It looked like we made this change like right at 2 years ago. Was there a reason why we made the change and moved the public comments? Because originally, whenever I was looking at in 2023, I think the first couple of minutes, they were at the beginning. Was there a reason why we moved it to the back of the meeting?
I don't remember, Commissioner Newkirk, unless somebody realized that that was what the ordinance said. Now, I don't think, here's my view on that. I don't think any of these, I don't think anything like that would imperil any action that the board took. I don't think it would, make anything that you did illegal. But my view is if you have an ordinance like this, I think you ought to try to follow it. And that's why I added this sort of language that makes it more flexible, that you can vary it if by majority vote, if there's some reason to do that. But I can't answer that because I don't remember why.
Okay, I was just curious. I think this is a good thing. I mean, I've said from the get-go, the public needs to be able to talk before some of the agenda items, and I think this would be a good thing. And because of that, I would like to make a motion to allow the public today to speak on this particular number 2 agenda item, if the public has anything to say about it.
We have a second.
I think you need to vote on it first, and then you can make that motion. You think? If you're gonna change it, you need to vote on the change, and then you can, then that's still a new point that the public could be able to do.
But that would have for public discussion about this one particular item.
Yep, but what we're putting forth is the change, right, Jeff?
That's right, but under the current ordinance, there is this provision that we're actually deleting about public participation on agenda items. That is still the current ordinance until you make this change, so I think
So
he
what I'm
can.
saying is we need to make the change, and then the public can automatically do that, right?
No, because
Not saying that we don't, I'm not knocking what he's saying.
Right.
But do we need to vote on this first?
No, I think you need to vote on his motion first, because once you approve it, then the change is already made.
All right, well, I second his motion then.
Okay, so we have a second. All in favor? So we have a unanimous decision. Is there anybody in the public that would like to make any comments on this item that's up for discussion right now? Okay. Not seeing anybody that wants to make any public comments. Moving forward. Is there any commissioner comments that would like to be made at this time? Not seeing any commissioner comments that would like to be made. Do we have a motion on this item?
Make a motion to approve it.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? We have a unanimous decision on this. Okay, moving forward, I know that Mr. Butler is not here. It looks like Mr. Simons is going to come up and cover for him today. So the next item on the agenda is to approve and ratify the use of Sand Creek Land Construction for hauling services the week of January 27th through January 31st, 2025, in the amount of $20,632.50.
Yes, sir. I'm here to answer any questions that y'all may have on this. I believe this is just a formality for Commissioner Connor.
Okay?
That being said, Mr. Chairman, on 3 and 4, save for time, I would like to accuse myself
Okay.
of both of those, please.
Sure. Any discussion on this item? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay. We have, all in favor? And we have a unanimous decision on this.
Who's that second?
Second was Mr. Mosley,
Thank you.
and we have a unanimous decision with the exception of Mr. Connor's recusal. Okay, moving on to number 4. Approve and ratify the use of Sand Creek Land Construction for hauling services the week of February 3rd through February 7th, 2025, in the amount of $15,198.75. Any discussion on this item? All in favor? Or, I'm sorry, motion.
Same motion.
Same motion? Second? Mr. Mosley will carry the second. All in favor? And it's going to be unanimous with the exception of Mr. Connor's recusal as well. Okay. Moving forward, we are at public comments. At this time, I will recognize those citizens who've signed up to address the board. Once your name is called, come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and make your comments. All speakers who are recognized will be allotted 5 minutes. And I believe we only have one person signed up, and that is Mr. Marcus Toole.
Hello, everybody. I'm Marcus Toole, 8 Crescent Avenue, Statesboro, Georgia. Just got back from Habitat on the Hill, which is Habitat for Humanity's Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C. Two of your commissioners joined us, as well as City Council person Tangi Johnson with the City of Statesboro. And I would like, by the way, they represented you well. I would like to encourage the rest of you to consider coming with us next year. We can only take one or two at a time, but we would love to have you join us. And let me share with you a reason why you might want to join us. Every year at Habitat on the Hill, there are training sessions on housing and tax policies and things like that. That's not just federal related, but it's also all levels of government. And it's some of the best training you'll ever encounter. Last year it was around zoning policy. This year it was around the interplay between local taxes, state taxes, and federal taxes in creating blight in low-income communities and commercial districts. And so, for instance, one of the things that came out of this conversation is the relationship between property tax and federal taxes, which allow property owners to get deductions on blighted property, which then incentivizes corporations to just sit on blighted properties and just bringing down the values of all the properties, both on in residential districts, but also commercial districts. That has led to a conversation with the Habitat Georgia affiliates and our state organization regarding the issue of this new tax law that Georgia has put in place, where you get for people who have homestead taxes, they get a tax break, and then some of that cost goes to sales tax. The concern, and actually the Georgia Chamber of Commerce has also raised this concern regarding commercial properties, is that what that then does is that for people to say that the own heirs property, most heirs property that's residential is in the ownership of low-income people, and that heirs property is not eligible for a homestead exemption, and therefore that tax burden gets concentrated on properties with the lowest income people. That encourages that property to then gets sold to these companies that then just sit on blighted property, and they do it for the income tax deduction on their other profits. And so you have this in a lot of these older houses in blighted neighborhoods, especially the ones that are really uninhabitable. A lot of them are actually owned by corporations, and they're just sitting on that property for the tax deduction. It also happens in the commercial side as well. And so then the higher those property taxes are on those that gets concentrated on those properties, well, that just increases the deduction that they are able to because it contributes to the negative value of the property in terms of the federal taxes, and so they get a big income tax deduction. We have commercial properties in town, like the one that the old Winn-Dixie property, as well as the old Kmart property. That's a classic example of this. So the Georgia Chamber of Commerce is raising the concern that this new tax law may actually increase the amount of profit that company or companies like it get for just sitting on blighted property. We don't take at Habitat Bulloch, we're not taking a position on this, but this is just one of the kinds of conversations we have at Habitat on the Hill about the interplay of local, state, and federal policies that policy makers benefit by attending Habitat on the Hill. And thank you for it. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Toole.
Mr. Chairman, if you would.
Yes.
Mr. Mosley and I did go to Washington for Habitat on the Hill, and it was amazing that when you start talking about housing and the need for housing, you know, you think that we're the only people, only county that needs it, but these were individuals from all over Georgia, all over the United States that have the same problem. It's not just a problem here in Bulloch County, but it's the same problem all over. And it was a very good conference. Learned a lot. And maybe we can use some of what we learned there and put it to work here.
Mr. Chairman, not to take up more time, but the only thing that I would further echo, I would just like to say some of the other commissioners need to start planning now to make that trip next year. It's well worth the time and the effort to go and attend. I think Bulloch County is better for it. So if you or some of the other commissioners, that is my plug that somebody attends. So thank you.
Okay, and that leads into the next section here. Do we have any comments from commissioners and staff?
Good morning, Dejan Casa, Recreation Director. All you guys should have gotten a newsletter that I left at your places. That's just our up and coming events and things that we'll have going on. Going to try to get you one of those probably every month that we can just kind of keep you guys updated on what we have and all the good stuff that we're doing out here for the citizens and all that. Lastly, I want to thank everybody for what we went through last week and all the attentiveness, compassion that was shown our staff. We lost a great man last week, Mr. Wayne Davis. If you look up any adjective in the dictionary, any positive, and that's going to be Wayne's picture next to it. Thank you to Director Tillman, Ms. Steinman, who were there with us at the scene that night. The attentiveness to compassion to the deputies that were there that night. It made staff and the family really feel special. I hate to kind of sit here because I'll probably get a little emotional. I really respected Wayne. He was a great guy. He will be missed, and want to thank you guys for everything y'all did for us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Morning, Commissioners. Robert Siemens, Assistant Public Works Director. I'll be brief with this. Just want to take a few minutes to go over some of the debris, storm debris update that we have. As you all know, February 4th marked our 120th day from the storm arriving here in Bulloch County. With that, that is also where the FEMA pay schedule changed at. We went from 100%, now we're into the 75-25 breakdown on the paying of the cleanup. Some other dates that need to be noted out there: February 28th, that will end round one of the pickup. We will start March 1st for round two, and we hope to make this as quick as possible. There'll be a lot of urgency with this. We want to get it done. We want to get it behind us. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be discussing with y'all as to when we officially would like to cease this cleanup. Another date that's important to note here is our 180-day is March 24th. That's a key date there. That's the 180 days that FEMA expects us to have this stuff completed and done with. However, we do have some ways of asking for extensions. Will we get them? We don't know, but we'll apply accordingly. Right now, so that you know, 324,000 cubic yards have been picked up in Bulloch County. Initially, we were estimating 250,000. We're still aiming close to 400,000 now is where we feel we'll be. With this, we have been running mulch, ground-up mulch from the sites. Currently, we have hauled approximately 300 tractor-trailer loads of mulch out of these sites to FEMA-designated drop points at Jenkins County and over near Cobbtown at a permitted location there. With that, I can also say that right now we are averaging approximately 28 haulers a day hauling, and they're hauling approximately 4,500 cubic yards a day off what we're finding beside the road. If you have any questions, I'll gladly entertain them.
Got a question. I saw on Facebook yesterday, we're making sure all the debris is by the road. I think it was February 28th. Is that what I saw?
We're ending round one. We need everybody to finish it up now.
Okay.
We put it out there a while back. We actually put it back starting in December. They needed to be finished up. The whole idea now going into the second is just picking up what remains and not continuing to add more out there.
Okay. And this has to be storm debris. This is not yard clippings or green spring cleaning debris. This has got to be storm related only. If not, FEMA will reject it at the sites, right?
They are already leaving it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
There is a lot of piles out there that have new green cut in it. The monitors will not allow it. That actually puts us in a bad spot with FEMA if we get site audited on that, and we can lose funding if we put that into the mix.
Okay. And that is a FEMA rule, not Bulloch County rule, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That is FEMA.
Appreciate it.
Robert, do you have any idea the last day that somebody can put something side the road? Has that been?
As soon as possible. Unless y'all tell me a specific date, I can tell you that we're asking everybody to wrap it up February 28th. There's still some time there because we are still running to pick up, but we would like to not have anybody out there putting anything else as soon as we can, but we have not actually pinned down a final date, and that's something that we can discuss with y'all when you're ready for that.
I just wanted to point that out because it's gonna come springtime, and in the tree business, I can tell you people don't know if the tree's dead or alive because most of them don't have leaves. And so when they bud out, then you're gonna get another round of trees beside the road because they'll figure out that they dead. So when we get a date, we need to let everybody know.
Yes, sir. I'm open for suggestions.
I just want to reiterate one thing that Mr. Siemens mentioned, which is we are at a 25% out of pocket now. So the longer we draw this out, it's pretty expensive. So FEMA is only reimbursing for 75% at this point. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank y'all.
If there's no more staff comments, Mr. Chairman, I have a few things
Go ahead.
to mention. Is everybody good over here? Anybody else? First, I just want to commend the Recreation Department for their response to the situation that they had last week. Mr. Cosby and his entire team stepped up. They had an event at the Ag Arena last weekend, and that department has seen their fair share of tragedies over the years. So it's not new to them, but Mr. Cosby and his team stepped up and made sure that the public and the people attending that event didn't miss a beat. No one knew that those things were happening behind the scenes, but I want to make sure that you know that you should be very proud of the staff that you have in that department, and also and public safety as well. But everybody that stepped up to fill the gaps didn't have to, but they did, and so I want to commend them for that. The other thing that I wanted to discuss a little bit today is the applications. I sent you all of the mitigation applications. We received 19 total. So I think we need to have a discussion on how you all want to go about selecting the committee. So I'll just kind of leave the floor open for you all to discuss that.
We're selecting 3 with 1 alternate,
I think that would be a good idea.
and this has
yes.
nothing to do with the actual manager itself. This is just the advisory board only.
That's right, just the
Okay.
advisory board. And of course, we have a work session coming up where we can discuss a little bit more of the manager situation and more about the mitigation and the technicalities of it and how they meet and whatnot. But right now, we need to pick the committee first.
So, and I'm just going to throw this out here, that my inclination with this is that we do this this interview process is open to the public so that they can see what's going on with it.
Let's do the workshop.
I'm sorry,
Let's do the workshop, and do we doing this now?
do we want to have this discussion now, or do we want to wait till the work session?
I mean, the public is invited to the workshop.
Yes, they are. You want to wait?
Yeah, I would
Okay,
prefer to
we'll,
wait.
we'll wait. All
That'll
right.
be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to say to back up on the thing for Robert Siemens. Robert, do we need to, as a commissioners, do we need to call the date for y'all? I mean, because ain't no need to let this run on and on and on. Do you need a date to put out there for everybody to stop putting stuff beside the county roads?
My recommendation at this time, sir, would be to give us till the next commission meeting. That will give us time as staff to discuss this. There are some things that are coming down from the state level. Let us look into that some. Let's meet with some of y'all and kind of fine tune this, and then at the next meeting, we can lock in some type of date with y'all's approval. And
But you'd like for us to be prepared at the next meeting just to call a date?
please,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Sorry.
Well, question about that. I mean, they should already have, all the stuff is already by, February 28th will be by the road. I mean, that's the last day anybody can put stuff by the road. But then after that, it just all depends on when the trucks get around to pick it up. We really don't control the truck schedule, do we?
February 28th is the last date of the first round of pickup.
Yes.
We're going out again on the 2nd. We can still pick up then. We would like them to have it out as soon as possible. We need to make a date, we need to make a decision at some point in the near future of a date that nobody else is allowed to put anything out there. We can cut this off, and then all we have to do is concentrate on the final cleanup.
Okay. I misunderstood. I thought the February 28th was the final cutoff date.
No, sir,
Put stuff by
that's
the road.
first round, and we'll make a call in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Kemp, if you would, could you come up and just talk for a minute about assessing damage to personal property, to homes? And I apologize for putting you on the spot here, but
I want to see him go back and get out of that row of people again.
Yes, sir. Corey Kemp, Director of Emergency Management. You want to talk about assessing homes?
yes, please.
Okay. The way we have been doing them is we've been using FEMA PDA assessments, or preliminary damage assessments. It's a guidance that we use if you've been flooded or if you just had wind damage. There is 4 breakdown sections to where we just look at your home. We decide where it fits in each of those categories. That's how we are marking them. There is affected, minor, major, and destroyed. Most of the homes are affected. We do have some major and some destroyed. I don't remember offhand what is the guidance for it, but I can send it to you. It is also on the Facebook page. It has been publicized in the newspaper and also on the county's website.
And you're still assessing damages in homes or to property, correct?
Correct. In the last 30 days, we've gotten maybe 20 more properties.
And there is a cutoff date that you're gonna stop assessing damages to property?
Yes, sir. April the 1st will be the cutoff date. I will stop assessing on April the 1st, but at that time, I will also go back to some of the properties that I think I have missed, and we will reassess those or get a better assessment of those.
Okay. So I just want to reiterate that, and I know we have news media here, but that is important because I know that there are people here in the county that I want to make sure that folks understand that if they have not had their homes assessed and they have concerns that they've had damages to their homes, that they get in contact with the local EMA to have them come out and look at their homes if they've had damages.
Correct. And you can reach us 3 ways: Facebook, a phone call, or an email. Also, I think there is a QR code still available, right? Correct.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome, sir.
Okay, I think we've run the gamut of commission comments, staff comments. Do we have anybody else that's got anything else they want to throw out there?
I just want to remind everybody for the town hall next week, next Tuesday, Loretta Moore Park. If y'all got any questions, y'all can go in and start emailing us. You can email it to me and Ms. Venus or whatever, and we'll start working on answers. Or y'all can just come to the meeting and ask us there. Appreciate it.
So we're going to move into our work session now, and I believe that Mr. Ramos and, did I say it right, Ramos?
Rojas.
Rojas,
It took me
I'm
a
sorry.
second to think through that. If it's okay, could we maybe recess until 9:30 so we can get everything set up
Okay.
on the screens? And I think they just got here, so.
Can we get a motion for recess?
So, Mr. Chairman. Second.
All in favor? So we're going to take a 10-minute recess till 9:30.
Good, sir. I was coming to say hi to you.
think you went to,
She says she knows.
I do. I'm just making sure I had enough for them, but I got it. Because there's one right there for Cindy.
I'll be right back. Just run to the restroom.
No, because there's no, I mean, you walked up to that. Yeah. I need this thing, man. I got lucky. I forgot my dang folder where I've got my other stuff in it, but thank goodness I read it yesterday.
How you doing? Oh, yeah, sure. Somebody got it. Usually the wheel have it's just a little air on that. And they shoot it and they get like I say, if not, I mean, you got to any idea? I would say that it is. So thank you. Consider the possibility they can but it is a, I'll warn you about it. It is tough. I mean, if there's room, it is like
everything that happens. Fire hose. What I tell you, last year, Paul, just telling you how it is, their If that's okay. Yeah, I'm totally good. But Act 5 is eliminated 3 What created suburbs of Los Angeles and
Okay, so it looks like we've got everybody back, and well, we lost a couple, but it's 9:32. We're going to go ahead and get started, and
I have Mr. Tony Rojas and Carl Hofstadter
Thank
here.
y'all. You have to bear with me. I worked last night, so names are not my strong suit right now. These gentlemen are going to come up and they're going to talk about some water issues here. I know folks have a lot of questions, and like I said in the last meeting, they're coming up here and they're going to present this information to the commissioners at the same time that the public is going to hear this as well. And I'm sure that there's going to be some questions when they get done. And I'm going to respectfully ask that everyone here just hold all of your questions, okay? You know, we're going to have this work session, and I'm sure that y'all are going to have questions. We're going to have questions. We just need to sit back and listen to what they have to say. And I want them to be able to just present this information to us so we can hear it and sit back and digest it without interruption. I know that this is a tenuous and sensitive subject in this community right now, but I think the best thing that we can do is just respectfully listen right now and allow them to present it so that we can hear this and then figure out where to go from there. So without further ado, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're not the first person to have a hard time with that name. I was originally a Kite, K-I-G-H-T, and our family's from around Johnson's Corner in Toombs County. But then my mom got married and my stepfather's name was Rojas, and so I got adopted. I remember going to school the next day. Anyway, I was Rojas for a long time, so I've been everything, and people get it a little bit better now that we have more Hispanics in the country. But what Carl and I wanted to do today is Carl Hofstadter with Hofstadter & Associates, and he's your engineer. And then my name's Tony Rojas. I'm with TPR Consulting Services. I know I've talked to many of y'all. I used to be a city manager for about 17 years, and then the latter part of my career for 18 years as the manager of the Macon Water Authority. And Carl and I were both hired to help with a structure that had been, parameters I think had been somewhat set up. And so, but what we wanted to do today is just try to educate you and provide you information, because we know you're making decisions, and in making decisions, you want to make sure you have the information to make those decisions. So I'll try to cover the things that I think are relevant that you would want to know. And then Carl will talk some about
Actually, what's going to get built.
Yeah, the system. And then let me show you right here. Excuse me. May have to put me a cough drop in. Yeah, there we go. So the things that I'm going to review is a water demand ramp-up schedule, and that's basically projections of how water will be drawn from the wells, not the individual wells, but the amounts and the period of time. And then the water system revenue projections for 4 years, but you could take that and you could take it out or shorten it, but I'll talk to you some about that. The groundwater withdrawal permit. This may be a lengthy process, but I was going to try to review the Bulloch Bryan Water and Sewer Agreement and just point out some relevant or important things in that, not to review every section, if you will, but the ones that have information that you would want to be aware of. And then Carl's going to talk about the water system service area. Like he said, the infrastructure, what's actually being built, where it's going to be, what a Southeast Bulloch water service area could look like if you wanted it. And then I'm going to review some action items for the groundwater sustainability program. Okay. So Cindy, this is the part that I don't know if I'll know how to do this.
You ready for me to click on something?
Well, she says if I click on it, like right
You want to do the demand?
that, it will come on, it'll open up. All right, so you have this information at your stations. And so the first thing is the water system ramp up, if you will. So if you can see, this is by calendar years. And actually, it says January to February 2025. The first thing I will tell you is that no wells are going to come online until probably June of this year. The first well, the well that's the furthest east, would be the first one, but that's not likely until June or July, okay? But the whole point here is when it comes on, you know, the well, all four wells are permitted at 6.650 MGD. Well, it's not like because they're permitted that way, the demand on the water will be instantaneous when all the wells are in. It's actually the plant is ramping up how much water it uses. And of course, there may be growth in Bryan County and you may have other demand, but it'll be incremental, okay? It's in phases. And so what this does is give you an idea of this. So it may be that when we get closer to, you know, like 2025, this summer, that you'll see the 1.41 MGD. So one of the things that you should know, and I'm not sure that you're aware of this, is that Bryan County is providing more water already to the plant from a well that was built on the site. It's not far from the county line. They actually have a permit for about 1.7 MGD, and they had excess capacity in their permit. So what they're doing is using some of the water they're already permitted to provide from the new well that's on the site. Okay, so some water is already being provided right now, probably this 0.88 MGD, but it's from their well on the site. Okay, and then they'll transition over to the other wells because they can't produce that much and they aren't permitted to. Does that make sense? Okay, but then it goes up. I think the important thing to see here is it looks like the most that they're going to have right now, as the plant is designed and built, they're projecting 3.92 MGD is what they are projecting. That's about 4 million gallons. Like I said, there may be other usage around it, but that's it. And they anticipate that basically 3 years from now in January 2028. Now, the plant is designed so it can be expanded. And in that case, they may require additional water and sewer, but right now they don't know what that is because the plant can produce up to 500,000 vehicles a year. Right now, what they built is for 300,000. So they're ramping up on the 300. And like anything with business, if there was enough demand or they wanted it, then they could go to the 500 and need more water and sewer to do that. So that's the information that we have. This is provided by Trent Thompson with Thomas and Hutton. He works for Bryan County, and then they were provided this information by Hyundai. Any questions around this? Okay. The next thing is just the income projections that we did for the business plan for the drinking water permit, and had to do a little bit of a massaging here because the information we got about consumption was based on calendar years, while your fiscal year is a July 1 to a June 30th. So I worked with Christie and them on that and projected it, so be mindful that you're not matching their years, and so we had to forecast. And I won't go through every one of these years, but you'll see there that, the revenue in the first year is 673 or approximately that. You got two revenue sources from the wells and the water lines that you built. From your wells, if you provide water, there's a wholesale consumption charge. It's $1. The other charge is the transportation of water through your pipes that you will own. And we'll get to this, but when it's over, they're building the system now, but when the system is built and accepted, it becomes Bulloch County's water system. Bryan County will be pumping water through mains in the two wells that they have that are your mains. So we structured it so they had to pay you a fee for using your mains. We structured it so that it's the same as the wells you own, the same fee, so that there's no reason for them to use one over the other. You can kind of balance demand, if you will, and you didn't have a lower fee for transportation than consumption, so that you would get the same amount of revenue, if you will. Initially, when we started, y'all may not be aware of it, it was structured, like when I was brought on board, it was actually, you got paid $1 for the water from your wells, but they only paid 50 cents for water out of their wells. And then I said, well, heck, you just use the 50-cent wells as much as you could and not use the $1. So what we need to do is make it so that there's no incentive to use one over the other and you get the same amount of revenue. And that's why we want $1 for consumption and $1 for transportation. So at any rate, if they go up to, and I'm turning to the second page here, if they go up to the 3.92 in 28-29, you'll have revenue of $1,430,000, okay? And then it's possible, the permits allow 6.625 if it go, and I didn't calculate this because the best way to do revenue projections is to be conservative, and all we do know is what Hyundai says they will use. You anticipate growth around it, but you don't know that that's gonna happen. So that's why we went with a conservative number, right? What you know you could have. But if you go to the other number, it gets you to about $2.4 million if you go to the 6.6, okay? Let me grab me my water here. So I got a cough drop in. So this comes from babysitting a 18-month-old with a cold this weekend, so I apologize. So there is this part of it. I think that's kind of straightforward. I guess a couple of things that I would tell you, and I'll get to it in the special provisions, because I think it was Commissioner Davis who said to me something like, things have changed a lot since I saw you last. This is like a moving target of things that are happening because you've got the whole future alternate water supply issue and how that might come. And so what I'm going to show you is how you do have some alternatives as you go forward, so that it's not like, because you look at 2028, I believe the way the future alternate water source is, looks like it's working, provided it passes the Senate and the funding is in the Senate. Initially, they would run a line and the city of Savannah would provide water. They estimate that's 3 years from now, okay? So at that time, and I'll go through this in the special conditions of the permit, you're supposed to come off of the wells that you've got, right? So you got that aspect of it. So that's about 3 years out. 2 years later after that, what they intend to have happen is that Effingham County is building a water treatment plant, and Effingham County would provide the water. Still the same thing, though, it's not coming from the wells, right? Well, what I'll show you is that you have provisions in your contract that if less water is used, but water is used, then you can modify your rate through prudent rate setting. So it may be, big picture, that Bryan County needs more water than the 6.6 million. You might serve other areas and actually be in a situation where you take less out of the Floridan, but if you adjust your rate to a reasonable rate, you can continue to get similar revenues or just a little bit lower, okay? So then if that happened, you might call it the best case scenario because you wouldn't be drawing as much from the Floridan, right? But you'd be generating revenue. And I'll walk you through and show you how that's possible, okay? So the first thing, and we're in the special permit now, we're on that. And I'm going to skip the short-term impact as far as the addressing short-term impacts of special conditions. That's the groundwater sustainability program, and I'm not going to speak to that now. The long-term impacts is what I'm going to speak to. It's on page 5 of 6, okay? It is paragraphs E and F. And basically, what it says is that there will be planning for a future alternate water source, ensuring surface water or other alternative source water is sufficient to provide needs for Bryan County mega site and the existing and future water needs of any additional industrial, commercial, and residential growth which may occur in the Bryan County mega site area. Now, the thing about that is they don't define the mega site area. That's left nebulous or vague. So it's possible that the area, like I said, Bryan County, and I'll show you in the contract, they actually need more water than the 6.65 MGD. So it may be that you can serve areas that aren't in what's defined as the mega site area and generate revenue from it, okay? Also, now, when the alternate water supply comes, it basically says it has to supplant the 6.65 MGD that's permitted, so that's clear too, okay? But you do have, and it's the last sentence in paragraph F, you do have the right to seek a modification to the permit. So you could seek to modify the permit to provide water to other areas that's not what DPD defines as the mega site area, right? And there's some level that you could pump water that you might feel like you wouldn't have a negative impact on the aquifer. So there's that part of it. G basically just says if you went further west and further away from the Kona Depression, that you just have to go through the normal permitting process. But I mean, not all that says is what the way it is now. It's nothing new. They just state it for some reason. So that's all that I was going to cover on the special conditions. I just want to let you know that it does require that when that alternate water supply comes, it supplements the 6.650. But it does say that it's a mega site area, and so that area would have to be defined. Actually, in the contract, what we did was define an area in northeast Bryan County that is like a service area for y'all. You'd be required to reduce what EPD made you do, but if you could serve it, you can serve that area. It's your area to serve, right? You want to be in a situation where somebody doesn't get you to provide water, but then if they go somewhere else, you're left holding the bag because now they got water someplace else. And so we drew out a service area. We do recognize in the contract that if EPD makes us change our permits, we have to. But providing they don't, that service area was meant to be the service area that the 4 wells would serve, and you would get revenues from it, okay? And I can do that for you later. So, any questions so far, y'all? Just kind of walking through it like this. I hope it's helpful. I'm going to go to the water and sewer.
Mr. Rojas.
agreement.
Mr. Rojas.
Yes, sir.
May I ask a question? If, when surface water is reached and the volume of the wells is reduced gallon by gallon, and the wells are no longer needed, I was told that those wells become property of the state, special deed wells. What does that mean?
I've never heard of that. I've never heard of the state taking over any wells that a system owns. You have the prerogative to use those to serve your own county, you know, and actually, you notice how the total for the 4 wells is 6.650, right? Okay. The wells can pump up to 7 million. And if you look at your permit, and we just had the permit up there, your permit is for 3.5 MGD, but it's a monthly average of 3.1250. The amount that remains between the 3.125 and the 3.5 was actually meant to be for Bulloch County should you in the future decide you want a water utility in southeast Bulloch County. That's why we reserve that. And one of the things that happens is when you think about the fact that future water source may come, well, that frees up water that you could use for your county if you wanted to, because the wells have the capacity to pump more if you wanted to, provided leadership did. That frees that up for water for you. So, I mean, the good thing is if you were able to serve them at a lower level, that leaves more water for Bulloch County to use if it wanted to. But I've never heard of, like, when you quit using a well, the state taking it over.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, and Carl's been in engineering longer than I have, but, you know, most of the time, if you're just not going to use it at all, they make you cap it. But I could see a circumstance here where, you know, at a minimum, the wells might be for reserve, right? If something happens in the other alternate water source, main break or something like that, you got to have water. Maybe you need additional water for fire protection. Even then, you'd be compensated for having that available for somebody. If you reserve capacity for something, you're normally compensated for it, right? So your prudent rate setting might allow you to put a rate in place where whether they used water or not, since it's something that's the backup, they pay you to be available when they need it. So there's alternatives that are available to you as you look at it. But it's meant that there's some water still there for Bulloch County to have for growth in your area. And actually, I mean, just doing population projections, there's been some studies. I see James here. And we did population projections. I mean, you've got, not that you'd expect, most people that own wells, y'all, in my experience, if you run a water main down the road, they don't jump on the water main. They keep using their well as long as their well's good. If the well goes bad, they like the water main. But otherwise, what they really enjoy is the fire protection that they don't have from their well, from the fire hydrants that are running down the road, and the firefighters are able to quickly load up the trucks, right, versus having to go over to a lake and get it out of a riser. It's just so much more efficient to fight fires when you got a hydrant available to you. So, at any rate, I hope we answered your question. We've not known of the state taking over wells from anybody, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Davis.
Imagine somebody telling more than that.
I understand. I'm just saying that has never been my experience or I've known of it. What I have known is, and Carl knows this too, you'll have to cap a well when you quit using it. They usually give you some leeway with that. 2 years, yeah. Okay.
I got a question for you real quick. The permit right now is at 6 point whatever it is, but whenever surface water is brought in, according to the permit, that amount of, the aquifer water's got to be decreased in the pumping, right? Unless we amend the permit, right?
That's right.
So if they bring in 7 million gallons of water through the surface water, then that means these wells won't be running at all, unless there's a special unless we amend the permit that's already there.
Yeah, or unless you serve another area, right? I mean, there's going to be growth in Bryan County, so you could serve another area outside of what they're calling the mega site area.
Okay.
And that's what I was trying to, if you will, drive home to you. I'll actually show you in the contract where they anticipate that they need, Bryan County being they, needs another 3.5 million beyond the 6.65 MGD. They state that the contract has a provision to where it would take y'all's approval, put 2 more wells in Bulloch County, but it was because they anticipated needing another 3.5 million gallons per day for the growth that they're going to have. So what I'm saying to you, it may be possible, I mean, I would make the argument to the state that you've got this infrastructure and it's great that there's an alternate water source, but you should generate some income from the infrastructure, right? And if it doesn't cause a significant impact on the aquifer, right, then you should be able to continue to generate income off of the system at some reasonable level. That would be what I would argue for. And so you may get what you need. Like I said, you may get revenues that are reasonable, but not be 6.65 MGD. It might be like a best case scenario. Obviously, that will take discussions. You'd have to seek the modification to the permit, et cetera. But I'll show you where they actually need that quantity based on their forecast, of development and land planning in Bryan County. So I'm in water supply now, in the contract, actually section 2.2. And y'all, let me tell you what I did. You've got this information. So y'all are compensating me. You don't want to pay me to be an administrative assistant. I'm not very efficient. Okay? So rather than try to get into this thing like a Word document and put stuff in fancy, calligraphy or italics so you could read it, I just wrote in here and then scanned it for you. It's a lot more efficient, but it gives me the points to come to and bring to your attention. I just mentioned this previously, just pointing out to you that, Bulloch's wells are 125, and that leaves you about 350,000 gallons. It's actually 375 the way it's permitted now that you could use for your county. And so there's that there. If you look at 2.3, it's exactly what I was mentioning to you, and it says it right here that it talks about wells 5 and 6, and it says here, based on future water demand increases within Bryan County, in order to meet 15-year demand projections, so within the next 15 years, they look like they would request an additional 3.5 MGD. So that tells you that in their forecasting, they see that they're going to need more water than the 6.650. The other information here is just, the well sites and water mains are going to be built. I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to flip over to 2.7, I'm going to go to section 2.7. The way this is going to work, they're going to have a metering station near the county line in Bryan County, okay? And the water's going to flow through that metering station except for one well. The well that's the furthest east, it'll just go straight in the county. And the way we'll measure how much water is produced by that well will be, the well itself has got a meter on it. Every big well does. Otherwise, we'll be able to look at the flow through the meter to determine how much water goes through there, okay, from the other three wells, if you will. We'll be able to know that. That's how that's done. And then those meters will be calibrated at least annually. If you've got a question about the consumption, you could request that it be calibrated. If they calibrate it, calibrating just means make sure it's measuring right? And if it turns out that it's measuring wrong and you ask for it to be calibrated, this is beyond the once a year, then if it's wrong, if it's out of the standard that the manufacturer recommends for plus or minus, because not all meters are on that, then Bryan County would pay for that recalibration, that test, the fact that you checked it. If it turns out it's right, you pay for it. So what that's meant to do is so that people aren't asking every day to recalibrate a meter, that you really think something's wrong with how much it's measuring before you say, hey, let's go check it again, okay? And then there are provisions in here about how things are adjusted. You'll have occasions where you don't know a meter's out of whack, and then you find out that it is. And so we've got provisions in here where you go back and look at like the past, it's either 3 months or 6 months usage, and you'll use that to estimate what it should be if the meter is wrong. And then when it gets repaired, you'll go back to using it like it is. I want to go to section 211, and this is important here because it represents a lot for y'all financially. So in addition to, and it's not in the revenue projections that I did, because it's a cost you don't have. Basically, it saves you money, so it's not like you get revenue from it. But we had Bryan County agree, right now Bulloch County doesn't have experience running wells, right? I mean, you just don't. You're not operating them, and you're going into this, and it's water for an industry. Bryan County's got experience, and they're the one who's responsible to the industry ultimately because they're the retailer of it. So we got Bryan County to agree to operate and to pick up your cost for operating your 2 wells, okay? Up to $21,000 a month, okay? And what the $21,000 represents, and I've got it if you want to see it, but it literally is projections on how much electricity is used to produce, what the well could produce. And it's factors like that. And so they went and developed some spreadsheets and came around to this $21,000. So if that was a real cost and the wells were operating operating fully, it's right at $250,000 annually. So they're going to pick up this cost for the first 5 years of this contract. And if both parties agree, it can be renewed in 5-year increments. So it might be possible to get it in the future. But I think it was 2 things. It was one, they know more about operations. Here's a chance for them to operate it, but you to put staff on board to learn how to operate them and be ready to operate them, after the end of 5 years if it comes that way. It's also a way to generate more revenue for Bulloch County is what it does. It saves you money, right? So, because otherwise we have to go into the revenue projections we had and take out whatever this expense was, and your net number would be less, okay?
Excuse me real quick, where's the cost sheet at? Do you have that in this packet? The expected cost sheet, maintenance?
No, I don't, but I don't have it with me right now, but I will send some information, about well operations. when we were talking and negotiating.
Okay, I'd just like to see that, because I noticed if it goes over 21,000, Bulloch County's on the down for it, so.
Right.
That's why I'd
And
like
so
to see those.
What it's meant to be, Commissioner Newkirk, is it's meant to be normal operating cost, is what it's meant to be, right? It's not meant to be, and that's okay too, because they're brand new, right? But I mean, they were also thinking, if something breaks on the well, they don't want to have to spend $100,000 to fix something, that kind of thing. So that's the reason they did that. It's like normal, it's normal O&M is what it is. It's normal operating and maintenance, which was a part of that projection, is what it is.
So if a line breaks, Bulloch County's responsible for it?
You are responsible for the mains.
Okay.
Yeah, all the mains are yours.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the good thing about the mains is they're brand new. Really, unless somebody runs into a fire hydrant, you're more likely to have a utility contractor out there do something and hit one of your mains or something like that. But all things being equal, you shouldn't have a problem with those mains. And I would suggest, and Cindy, I've talked about this, I think what you'd want to do probably is hire a third-party contractor to be on call to take care of your mains if you had a problem, and they've got them around here. And then you might have somebody who manages the system, communicates with Bryan County about the well operations, and then if you have an emergency and a main gets busted, call the contractor in and they come and repair it. That kind of, I think that would be the best case scenario for y'all. There's a provision at the end here, this last paragraph, and it's in both contracts. I won't spend a lot of time on it. If you have something happen with the wells and you have more than $500,000 in expense, or if EPD changes regulations, you can recover that capital cost. You can recover that expenditure from Bryan County. This provides you that. Now, the same provision is in the wastewater side. When we get to wastewater, you could buy wastewater treatment from Bryan County, and if they had something more than $500,000, you'd have to pay for your prorated share of that, because there'll be other customers. In this case, Bryan County is your only customer. But the reason we did it at 500 and 500, you could let me see how to say this. It's more likely that actually it was 100,000 and 100,000. You can bump into 100,000 at a wastewater treatment plant in a millisecond. You don't hardly bump into $100,000 at a well. So I said, well, if we can get these guys to 500, I'm going to get it high enough that it probably wouldn't impact Bulloch County, and we're not really going to have anything with your water system anyway. Plants have a lot more moving parts, pumps, motors, all kinds of equipment. So that's why we changed that. And I apologize if I'm going into too much detail, but I'm just trying to educate you. And then Section 2.15, that's important because it does give you a service area in Bryan County that you would serve. And then it goes into talking about the future alternate water supply. I will say, this thing right here has conditions under which Bryan County would go to a future alternate water source. It really doesn't mean a lot, because really whether Bryan County goes to a future alternate water source or not, the special provisions in the permit are what prevail, okay? And Jeff and I talked about that a lot. They want to put this language in here to feel good about it. They could, but the bottom line was the special condition permits prevail in deciding whether or not they've got to go to an alternate future water source and when they did. This had provisions where there was state funding and where it was, close enough to the plant for them to connect on it. It's a lot of, really, they were putting that in there for people who might see what they expected to be able to do it, because it's going to be very expensive. Right now, this is like $350 million is the estimate, I think, for the future alternate water source. not every county has that kind of money sitting around, right? So what they're trying to do is put terms in here to let other people know who are needing it, what they felt like they needed if they were ever going to provide a future alternate water source. Here's the section 3.1G. This is the one that I mentioned to you. So it says, the parties acknowledge and agree that in the event any regulatory agency reduces the quantity of Bulloch's groundwater withdrawal for wells 3 and 4, Bulloch shall have the right to restrict services to Bryan County. Because we knew that if EPD made us, they wanted us to provide so many million. We can't do it if the regulator won't let us do it, right? And then it says, in such an event, Bulloch County may adjust water consumption charges in accordance with prudent rate-making principles and further direct Bryan County to limit volumes of water to comply with the conditions of the permit. So that's where I was telling y'all, you've got a provision that allows you to adjust your rates prudently if they reduce what they use from you, okay? And I'm gonna skip over the other, I'll just do the consumption charges. It's on 3.4.1. So you've got the dollar for water consumption and the dollar for transportation for 5 years, okay? They want us to hold it steady for 5 years. We did two things. That was another reason for them to pay for the operation of your wells. If they're not going to let you incrementally adjust those rates annually, we say, well, geez, guys, come on. You want us to hold a rate steady for 5 years? So they said, well, okay, we'll operate your wells. That'll be what we can do in return. Well, just to let you know, is at the end of the 5 years, that rate goes to $1.25. So it goes up 25% at the end of 5 years. It adjusts itself. After that, it goes up 2.5% annually for the remainder of the 25 years in the agreement. Okay? The transportation fee, it's structured the same way. It's $1 for the first 5 years, and then it goes to $1.25, and then it goes up 2.5% annually. Okay? There's language in here, you know, if you don't pay they don't pay the bill on time, they've got penalties, you know. I think it's 1.5% per month. Those are pretty common. There is a thing here where you don't want Bryan County to pull more water from the wells than you're permitted to do, so we've got some penalties in here, and you can adjust your charges if they pull more. I wouldn't anticipate that happening. You might have a situation where you have a fire, and maybe you're over for your monthly average, but I wouldn't think you'd be over for your annual average. But we've got language in there for that. There's a provision that calls for you to have maps of your system, but you want maps of your system anyway, and as-built will be provided. The engineer will require the contractor to provide as-built drawings, and you'll know exactly where it is. But you want to know where your stuff is. You want it on your geographical information system. You want to know where a valve is, so that if there's a main break, you know which, you know, this within 3 yards, you know where a valve is, so you can isolate it and get that water to stop flowing. I'm going to go to sewer, the general special conditions for sewer. So there's a provision in here for Bulloch County to buy wholesale sewer service treatment if you want it. So if you were going to try to control growth, and that's what sewer does, because sewer creates density, with sewer, you can have smaller lot sizes And so you might take sewer somewhere where you want there to be density in neighborhoods versus other areas where you don't want that density. You might control it at interchanges and things like that. You know what I mean? You manage growth. Sewer is a real good vehicle for accomplishing that. But this allows you to purchase, excuse me, 250,000 gallons of sewer treatment from Bryan County. You can actually purchase a total of up to 1 million gallons a day of sewer treatment capacity in this contract. That's significant, y'all. If you don't want it, that's fine. But 1 million gallons of sewage treatment is worth a lot nowadays, and it's expensive. And the fact that you don't have to go build that plant, bid it out, and then operate it, but just pay for the capacity and have it treated, I mean, that's a good thing. And it's also, you know, like regional development, if you will, governments cooperating to get something accomplished. So you've got the first 250,000 gallons that's available now. You've got until 6 months after the plant is operational to basically pull the trigger to purchase that, or you lose that capacity. At least Bryan County has the right to sell it to somebody else if they want, or use it themselves. They may not use it, it may still be available, but they've got that right. The other capacity, you can just request it in a letter, okay? And then they will tell you what it costs and they'll make it available to you. But what's going to happen with this plant is it's designed so that it's a membrane type plant, and they've laid it out so that it can be expanded in certain blocks. And probably the best time for you to buy capacity or more capacity would be when they're getting ready to make improvements, and then you do it and it just fits right into that. And there's not additional expense just for doing it for you. Sewer, same thing. There'd be a meter at Highway 280. And that's where that meter would be, and it would just see how much water, how much sewage goes through it, and that's what they charge you for. Again, I told you that initial capacity, which is in section 4.4. You got 6 months after the plant's open, and the plant's going to open probably sometime this spring, I think. Like March or April was the projected date they had given me.
Mr. Rojas, real quick, just to clarify, we're talking about a treatment plant, a sewer treatment plant. We're not talking about the Hyundai plant. Okay.
Right. Thank you. And then you see in section 4.5 where it talks about Bibb County may request future capacity within Bryan County wastewater facility in increments of no less than 250,000 gallons up to a combined total of 1 million. That's that first sentence in 4.5. Section 4.6. So let me say this. Sewer capacity is expensive, all right? So the way Bryan County manages it is they manage it by ERUs. And when somebody does a development, they pay for the ERUs that are anticipated by that development. It's an equivalent residential unit is what an ERU is. That number is 300 gallons. It's just, it's a number in the industry. It's been calculated by a lot of standards. And so what you would do is the 250,000 gallons adds up to a certain number of ERUs, and you purchase that. The total for the ERUs for sewer is $10,024. That comes to like $34.12. I pulled a typical Tony Rojas. You know, I studied all this stuff. I made additional notes on things like that. Went in my office last night, organized all my stuff, and left my folder with my numbers in it like that. But I'm pretty good with numbers. It's about $34 and some change. That's a good number, y'all, because what's going on with your ERU is it has two things in it. It has not only the cost of the plant being built and the capacity you're using, but a line would have to be built from the plant to the county line. And you're paying, as a part of the ERU, your prorated cost of the capacity in that line to the plant. So that makes it a little bit higher than a normal ERU. Right now, the numbers that I'm talking to engineers for a wastewater treatment plant is $30 a gallon, okay? And then that turns into an ERU. This is 34, and considering that you're paying for that other section of line that comes to, I think it's a reasonable number that you end up with. It's just expensive. But what you would do, if you did this, if some point leadership decided and it bought capacity, you'd pay for those, and then as development occurred, they'd pay for it. And they'd pass it along to their single-family dwelling unit or whatever it was. They literally would pay Bulloch County and reimburse you for your ERUs and other costs you might have for infrastructure that you built. There'd be a price that they'd pay, and you'd turn around and get that back from the developer or the homeowner that built the house. They'd pay for it. You wouldn't try to make money on it, but what you try to do is recoup your cost. You'd make it so that the development pays for what it gets, not the county, is what you're after there. The calibration of the meters are the same. The rate for sewage treatment is $5 a thousand. And actually, the good thing about the sewage treatment is they're charging you what their cost is to operate and maintain the plant and nothing more. They'll calculate what it was for the year before and how much sewer they treated, and that's how they set it. But it starts off at $5. I think Carl would tell you that's pretty good for sewer treatment right there. If you're paying somebody to treat your sewage, it's a good rate. So there's, ever how many gallons go through that meter, you're charged. Again, if you had customers, you just pass that along to customers. After that, there are permit limits on sewage. This isn't uncommon. I won't go into it, but basically, you'll have a sewer use ordinance if you did this, and you should, and you would limit the characteristics of waste that could come into the system. And you basically, the simple thing to do would be to adopt the same sewer use ordinance that Bryan County has. But this is not uncommon. Businesses expect it. Residential customers really don't even have to worry about these numbers at all. They don't have to worry about, chromium, copper, those types of things. That's not an issue. And if a plant is going to, or a business, if you happen to have business that had waste that was stronger than that, they pre-treat it before they put it into your system. And then there's that same provision I mentioned about if they had $500,000 worth of expense at the plant, you know what I mean? They could charge you a capital recovery fee if it's more than 500. And then same thing like the water, you can't give them more sewage than you bought capacity for, or they could charge you, they could increase your rate for that, or either require you to stop, which is the same thing you could do. This is a 25-year contract, renewable by 10-year increments, the contract is. So I know that took a long time. I don't know how long, but I know.
About an hour. I won't be that long.
And then the only other thing I've got is action items on the other, but, I mean, I'm trying to make sure that y'all are knowledgeable. I hope Commissioner Davis said, you're probably going to learn something more than he knew before I did that, but I hope it helps. And of course, I mean, I'm available if you have any other questions, or, you're looking at it and you're wondering this or that. I mean, I'm here to serve you and your interest. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hofstadter. All right.
I do have a question with the sewage. And I ask this because I know we have two people in here that are in the septic tank business in the audience. If we bought into this sewage system, would they allow us or allow these people to dump their septic system or stuff from their septic tanks into it?
I don't know, is the answer. We didn't put a provision in here for that. Most of the time when they build wastewater treatment plants nowadays, they'll actually put a station in there for that. With it being a membrane system, I don't know the implications of that.
There'd be a charging station, and then you'd filter out, you have bar screens and this kind of stuff that wherever y'all are, you would filter all of the solids out, you know, rags, stuff like that. Now, that, of course, it's very concentrated, and so that would be a pretty good charge to that. I mean, it ranges anywhere from 10 cents to 25 cents a gallon to charge them. And even up in North Georgia, it's up to 50 cents per gallon to accept it. Because it's septic, and you're gonna send it down to the treatment plant, which is gonna be aerobic. So they got to overcome all the anaerobic bugs and convert them into aerobic bugs, and y'all won't hear all that, but that's the bottom line.
So we can ask that question though, you know.
Thank you.
All right, Carl.
You got through that all right. Thought you were gonna have a coughing fit. My name is Carl Hofstadter, and my program is not gonna be as long as Tony's. I hope it'll be as informative. Hofstadter Associates, I started company in 1982, and we're the engineers for about 50 cities and counties in Middle and South Georgia. And that's the only dog and pony show I'm going to do. Y'all have hired us, and we certainly do appreciate it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm not much of a politician. You know, I'm an engineer. And so I was given this job to do, these wells, these lines, this is what we're going to produce. All that was decided before I became involved. But I do want to show you exactly what is going to be built and how you're going to operate it. Okay, so if you could put up on the screen the map. Get the other one first, and actually I put them in the wrong order. Yes, all right. Here is southeast Bulloch, okay? The light blue is the Brooklet water extension area, and that's in your service delivery agreement. The dark blue is what I'm going to talk about, and then this will be the area that you can serve from these wells and this water line. What I'm going to talk about is three things: what's going to be built, what are the options, and what's it going to look like. The first thing, go back to the other one. I-16 was a red line. You can see it right down here. I-16 is coming up. It parallels Highway 46. Thanks. Go to well number 2. Well number 2 is right there. Okay, that is the westernmost portion of the water system that's going to be installed. You have well number 2. We're going to put a water line in east that's going to go to well number 1. That's going to be a 24-inch line, okay? And then from well number 2 to the meter, which will be right here, that's a 24, and it switches to a 30-inch. Actually, that line that's coming from I-16 is the other well that Bryan County is installing. And then you go to Highway 80 to the far right, and from that 24 to the 30, no, right down here, that's going to be a 30-inch line to Highway 80. That's all that's going to be installed
If you need to, you can climb up on that table.
I get Jack, he'll help me with this. Okay. Now, what are your options? You have to provide water to Bryan County. Okay, that's a given. You've got an agreement, you got to do that. Now, as far as the water or future water for Bulloch County, one of your options, do nothing. Just don't do anything. Just leave it the way it is. Collect your money. Pull out whatever water, Bryan County needs, whatever the agreement says, and you don't do anything else. That's an option. Now, I'm not going to get into the politics of all that, and please don't ask me. The second option, obviously, is to expand the water system and have a water system for Bulloch County. Now, what I want to say is, this water system that we're putting in right now is top tier. I mean, it is 21st century. It is Cadillac. It's top of the line. And when we designed it, I designed it so it could not only serve Bryan County, but it will serve Bulloch County if you want it to. Okay? What you see here is there's the dash lines. Everything else up here is a 12 to 16 inch or inch main. And this would be the total build out of southeast Bulloch. Now, are you going to try to do that tomorrow? No, of course not. It would be phases. Okay, the first phase would become from well number 2, past Ash Branch all the way up to the intersection of 67. That is where you had a study done. That's where your growth is going to be. And so this would be a way to provide water up 46 all the way to 67. As I said, the timing of that is up to you. The growth on that is up to you. The sewer, the wastewater is up to you. You do have a $4 million grant from the United States to go towards a sewer system if you want it. There again, if you want it, fine. If you don't, fine. Now, there's options on that too. You can send it to Bryan County, but Statesboro is in play here too. They have a wastewater treatment plant. So transporting it to Bryan County or transporting it to Statesboro, whichever is the best thing to do is what you ought to do. Now, I do understand, and I don't want to get all into this, but obviously you are, Carl, so why are you saying it? But I think Statesboro wants to come down 67 with the water to Mud Road, and then we would want to take it from there back to 67. There again, that's between you and Statesboro. I'm the engineer. I'm going to advise you, and I'm looking after Bulloch County. That's my job. That's what I do. And so when we get through this project, you're going to be in number 1 shape to serve Bulloch County if that's what you want to do. Now, I talked to Bill Fischette, who was with EPD, and he said, Carl, let me say this about your wells, and let me say this about your water, okay? Yeah, you have a permit, but if Bulloch County decides to develop this area up here, we will let you have that water. Because you own those wells, and the citizens of Bulloch County, if they want more water, then we will grant it to you. They're not going to just give you whatever number willy-nilly that you say, but once you show that you have a need for it, EPD will allow you to provide water to the citizens of Bulloch County. Let's see. I do think, Mr. Newkirk, I think you were the one that was saying, what happens if we have a main break? I think you need to have a utility contractor on call if something happens. It is new, and it's very unlikely could something happen. And we have breakaway fire hydrants here, so when you see in a movie the car hits a fire, that's not, no, we have a stem down, it shuts that off. But we have valves in there, so if you have a break, you shut the valve, he can fix it. The good news here is you only have one customer right now, and that's Bryan County. So you shut your wells off, therefore no more water is gonna be going, so it's, because a contractor, if he can put it in the dry, it's gonna be a whole lot less than if you've got a big spouting water main out there. So, Mr. Bennett, that's about all I've got, and if there's any questions or anything like that, I'll be happy to answer it. I told Cindy I just felt compelled to come down here because I want you to know this is designed the proper way. It's designed for, if you want it, we can flat serve Bulloch County, especially that southeast. Is that anything else? Do I have any questions for the old engineer here?
Who's got the service area below 16?
You know, I should have included that. I did this about, I don't know, 2 months ago. This is the only area that your report showed. And actually, it did show a little bit below 16, but yes, we can serve below 16.
Okay. I was just curious. I know, obviously, I know where Brooklet's coming from, and I know where Statesboro. I didn't know if Bryan County had already grabbed Bulloch County land as far as the service
I'm
area.
talking about your whole county line right there all the way.
No, so
Yeah, all that can be served
as it
too.
relates to your question, they can't do that. And the main reason that wasn't shown on this side, pretty expensive to bore the mains under the interstate, which they won't let you put them on bridges anymore. So it was just anticipated that would be where those mains were now. If you decided to go under the interstate, you could. You could. There's that coffin.
Why don't you just sit back there? I'll ask the question. You have to board interstate. That's not, you can do that. And I fully anticipate that if you wanted to, that you could. So that's a good catch, and yes, we can serve down there.
Carl, I might add, the service delivery agreement would need to be amended to
yeah.
reflect this, which there were some discussions previously with Statesboro, but
You're right.
that has not been consummated.
Exactly. Your service delivery, and Tony, you probably know more about it than I do, but everybody in the county has to agree on this right here. And so that's why I just said I thought Statesboro would come down to right here, where mud is, and then we would take it down there. I think that's reasonable, but a lot of time engineers, we just think engineering, and we think what's reasonable. It may not be politically what happens, so I'm not gonna comment on that anymore. But gee, thanks, I appreciate you bringing that up. Anything else? I don't mean to point that at people.
What is going to help us also with our fire protection on the south end of the county too? I would see that having this work there would be a tremendous asset.
It is, but there again, I don't want to get into all that. Y'all have to decide that, but it'll boom. I mean, where water goes, Bulloch will grow. I mean, that's an old statement.
I appreciate you clarifying. There's been a lot of talk about how much water. I've heard 27 million gallons a day, right on up you can go. And you have clarified that the two Bryan County wells is a little over 3 million gallons, both wells. At the most 7 million gallons a day.
That's it.
If the other two wells don't come online, like you said, that's zero. But everybody up here run on the tax deal about keeping lower taxes. Now, what I want you to know, I've got a Class 4 water license. I repaired all the water lines for Sunbelt Utilities. They got 38 water systems. I done fixed to run over fire hydrants and all of that. But you got to take in the quadrants, and the quadrants I'm talking about are the quadrants on the interstate that everybody's got to take into consideration. When them quadrants develop, and the only way they're going to develop if we got water and sewer for a hotel or motel or anything like that, because they can handle water. You can put a well in there, they can have their own well and handle water, but they can't get rid of the sewer because it takes up too much area to put in regular lines, absorption lines. And so with that being said, you got 119 Arcola and 67. So every motel that you miss, every gas station you miss, and that's not people using our roads in Bulloch County. That's people using the interstate. Well, you saying no to Splosh, you saying no to Lost, you saying no to a pile of tax money that people, hotel and motel taxes, that people would pay for coming through Bulloch County and not use a thing we got other than the interstate that we don't have to keep up anyway. So
That's
just
true.
to back up what you say, I understand, and I do have a water system myself that I charge for my water. And it's a cash cow. I mean, it's a cash cow. Now, I know everybody frets about the much water, but then now we done determined there ain't that much water that everybody keeps talking about. And we can regulate how much we want to do out of the other two wells. They ain't got to pump 7 million gallons a day. We might want to pump 7,000 gallons a day, and that'll be our choice of who we want to build on the interstate. Now, but all of the things that's floating around in the air that are not true as far as, like Mr. Davis asked, I've never heard of one. I've capped them and filled them up with concrete myself, but I ain't never heard of the state taking one.
I don't think that's
but
gonna happen.
I'm glad y'all come. I'm glad y'all answered these questions, and so we'll go from here, and everybody have a better understanding now. Thank you.
One of the good things y'all have is y'all can, like I said, y'all can do nothing. Y'all don't have any debt on this system right here. I've brought 3 counties into water systems. Believe me, they had to borrow a bunch of money to get that done, and so that is one thing you have in your favor. So, other than that, is there anybody got any more questions? Jeff, you got anything else you want to say?
No, I just.
All right, Cindy, I'm done.
I get through with it, I'll do the action items. Couple of things that I will mention. One thing that really would help for fire protection would be a water tank. Y'all don't have a water tank, and you can pressurize the system and provide a lot of water with the wells, but it's always good to have a water tank, because if you have a main break, you know what I mean, then you turn the tank off so it doesn't deliver, or you isolate it, you've got that water in a repository for you to fight a fire. The other thing is, if you were to modify your permits, do the service delivery and all that, and let's just say you got 500,000 gallons from EPD, you don't have to build a water line from the well you got all the way to 67. You could go to 67 and put a well in there based on the permit you're already allocated, and you could have a system and then grow them together over time. You use some of that 500,000 you got for the well that you put in is the kind of thing you can do. I'll just mention that to you. Got that right? Okay. Well, the last thing I've got, and I won't dig into all of these, but I created this for Ms. Steinman. I know what it's like to be a county manager. Now, I don't know what it's like to be an interim county manager. I think that's got to be tougher. So she's taking on a lot, and I think doing a good job. But I said, well, what can I do to help her? And I said, well, I can go through the groundwater sustainability plan and create action items of things that actually need to be done, so she could kind of follow that. There's a joint municipal managed fund that needs to be created. I've talked to Christie about that. I think she's talking with the CFO in Bryan County. You need to set that up, because it is a joint fund. You need to appoint an advisory mitigation manager. You may want that to be somebody's responsibility who has dual roles. I think initially it may be a lot of work trying to get well registration and that kind of thing done, but I don't see it being a lot of work long-term. I think, I will tell y'all, and I could be wrong, I don't anticipate a lot of impact on wells unless a well is substandard, right? Because wells are supposed to be 30 feet below the water level, and based on the modeling that EPD had done, like the lowest it pulls it down, and that's if you're pumping 6.65 MGD 24/7 is 19 feet. So So there may be some substandard wells out there, you know, it just happened, maybe inadvertently. They didn't get deep enough. But even then, the way it's going to ramp up, and that's why I was showing you the way it ramps up, it's not going to be 6.65 MGD when they start operating it. And it's going to take time. And it may actually be that when you start to get anywhere close to 4 or 5 million gallons, that the alternate water source comes and then that reduces that. So we may not. You know what I'm saying? I don't. If the scenario works out like that, then you're not going to have the impact on water levels. And even then, they were risk averse with the where they said you have to have a mitigation plan in place when normally you wouldn't have to. You'd had to draw it down below 30 feet before EPD normally even saw it as an impact and required anything. But I think they wanted to be risk averse. There's the advisory committee to appoint. I don't know how much urgency there is in that because they're advisory, but it would be good to have, you know, members of the community just like y'all that are educated on it and how it works. And then after we're in place for a year or so, that's where, when we can see what's going on, where they could offer suggestions on how it might change, right? You know, suggestions, advice on what we could do better or differently, kind of like that. I put the critical things that need to be done. First of all, I listed things that required cooperation between the counties and things that didn't. And we set it up so that you could have your own staff administering the program in Bulloch County, and Bryan could have their own in their county. The thinking was, you know, you'd feel better if you had your own personnel serving your own citizens, was the idea. The money is still commingled, and you'll be reimbursed for expenses that you have. But that was the idea there. We've got to get forms up on the website. We have to get information up on the website about the program. And I created critical action items, and I'll just mention these real quickly, and that's the creation of the mitigation fund. You got some commitments to fund it. I'd be in a hurry to create the fund because I want people to send me their money. That's why I'd do it. I'd want to get the money in the account because once it's in your account, it's your money. So the next, you need the mitigation manager. We need to be prepared to start the well registration by March 1st. I think prepared doesn't mean that you have finished or you sent everybody a well registration form, and you may want to manage it differently. You may want the forms available on your website that people can download and fill out and mail in. You know, those types of things. You could do it like that. You just think about the most efficient way to do it, to gather that information. The program, you really want everything for the program in place by, it's 1 or 2 dates, April 1st or the latter of when the first well starts operating. And if you remember, I told y'all the projected date for the first well operation is June 1st, right? So we want to have everything in place by June 1st. We want to do that. And then we need to conduct a workshop between February 1st and April 1st. I think that's really pretty straightforward, and we could use the presentation that we did on the plan to start developing the presentation for the PowerPoint for the public education. But there's that. And then finally, another thing that's important to do, and it's important, coordination with Bryan County, but you're going to put out an RFP to have well drillers that you would hire, right? And I remember somebody asked me some questions, I think it was you, Mr. Commissioner Newkirk, about you'll have units, you know, for type work, and you'll bid those units out and you'll get pricing. You want to end up with 3 well drillers, and then that way, if somebody does appear to have a significant impact, they could go out and investigate it. But that's it on that. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Mr. Ross, you touched on a few things. I would like to add this too for everybody's knowledge. Whether you put the last 2 wells online or not, if you don't want your hotel and motel taxes and you don't want your splosh off from the quadrants being developed, them fire hydrants going down Old 46. I don't know how many, maybe Ben Tapley can touch on it, he's the fire chief. I don't know how many people that would touch in the lower end of the county to bring their ISO rating down, and I feel sure there's a pile of people in this room don't even know what an ISO rating is. But that's what your homeowner's insurance is based on. Had a fellow that was in the audience earlier stated that, had a friend at Brooklyn, because his ISO changed, his homeowner's insurance went down a few $1,000s a year. So if you don't take no water out of it, but if you just got it for fire access, and that's one thing. And Mr. Keith Hamilton, you touched on him a while ago, and with all his glory back there, me and Keith, we own pumping companies. We do the wastewater pumping. And I can tell you now, to answer that question, when you pull up, number one, Bulloch County, I think the city said the other day they got 4,500 houses to be built. In Bulloch County, I think James told me 4,300. We done got, I don't know how many, that we pumping all we can pump. And so the only place to take it is either Meadow or Portal. And anywhere else you go to another county, they want to know if that wastewater come out of their county, they'll take it. And if they don't, they won't take it. Savannah will take it. Keith, I think you might would tell me. So everybody can look that if this don't happen, your homeowner's insurance ain't gonna change. And when you get your septic tank pump, instead of around $400, be ready for about $700 to $900 on that. So,
Yeah, I think that's.
I mean, so whether you use the water or don't use the water, if you just got access to the water and access to that sewer, it means so much to the people that live, and I don't live down there, so I mean, it's, but if you live down there, then your ISO rating and the capability of the sewer, it means that to the homeowners that done live down there, not much less who's gonna build down there, but the ones that live down there. I just wanted to state that, to clarify who take wastewater. No, man, when you go to them, and if it didn't come out their county, they run like you got some of it on a stick. They don't want it.
Yeah, and that's not uncommon. I think it's one of the problems we've got in Georgia. You can build septic tanks. Some of it you can land apply, but it's not like when they build wastewater treatment plants, they are to identify what area is served by that plant with wastewater, because that's what people aren't thinking about. And you allow growth, and you have single-family dwellings, and they go everywhere, and they have septic tanks. But then if you don't have any place to take the septic, you're in a mess. I've seen Houston County, and that's a big old county, asking to dump the waste in Bibb County, and of course, you know what the answer was. It was no. Now, you got a relationship with Bryan County, so maybe that's something that really would help for you.
Can either one of y'all answer the question of if you had to build a wastewater plant, just a small wastewater plant?
He said $20. It's more like,
Oh, I said 30.
no, 30. It was $30 a gallon, so if.
I'm talking about if we had to build a wastewater plant for Bulloch County.
If you build a 1 million gallon a day wastewater plant, it's
$30 million. Well, that's what Bulloch County can get ready to, we can go with this, or we can get ready to build a $30 million wastewater plant, because you can't keep putting septic tanks in the ground, and then the health department require you to pump them every 5 years, and somebody's got wastewater running out on the ground. Keith has nothing invested other than his, to give you his knowledge. When your neighbor turns you in because you got wastewater running out on the ground, they call Keith or one of us, and we go pump it. Well, we ain't got nowhere to dump it, so if we got to haul it to Savannah, the charge is gonna go to the homeowner. And eventually, they're gonna quit taking it. And so eventually, Bulloch County is gonna have to do something with wastewater. They can do this, or they can build one, but something. they're gonna have to do.
Best I've seen, I think the solution actually, and I'll quit after this, because I kind of like this water and sewer stuff. I like local government stuff too. It's what I've done my whole career. I enjoy it. To me, it's not really work. But what I was going to say is Spartanburg Water in South Carolina, they actually have it where they charge residents annually. It's like a small tax, and then when they need to dump their wastewater, it costs them nothing. Because that's just it. They don't plan for it. And then they're dumping it, and it can be tough on some people. Well, in their case, they got a service area. You're paying a little fee, and then when it's time, it's dumped. So it really takes care of it, makes it easier on the customer. But that's that. Thank you for your time, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Thank y'all.
My pleasure.
Robert Siemens, Assistant Public Works Director. Gentlemen, First of all, I want to apologize. I did speak in error a while ago. I've got quite a few dates and stuff here on my note sheet, and I need to make a corrected statement to the commission. Mr. Newkirk, you asked a while ago, when is the cutoff date for putting debris by the road? February 28th. Commissioner Russian, in speaking a while ago, I got the dates wrong here. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll need time to put together some recommendations to come back to y'all to be able to clarify when we suggest to you to cut off all pickup. Okay? That is a error on my part. I wanted to clarify it and make sure that everybody is aware of that. Any other questions that I can answer at this time? Okay. Thank you very much. I apologize again.
And I'll just reiterate that, what he said, so that everybody in the audience and the folks at home understand. The last date to put debris on the side of the road is going to be the 28th of February. And then over the next 2 weeks, we will be determining and announce a date to when we will end all curbside pickup for storm-related debris.
All right, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Rojas and Hofstadter, thank you all for your presentation. I think that was very beneficial for the board. We are actually coincidentally discussing committee members now. So if you all want to enter into a discussion about how you want to select the committee, again, we have 19 applications that we've received, and I recommend, regardless of how you decide to go about selecting it, we need to have 3 committee members and an alternate. I think that would be a good idea.
Before we progress, I'm going to ask if we could go for a motion to take a 10-minute recess.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor? All right, we'll return at 11:10.
I appreciate it. Let me do that.
I can't think of Tom's name. No, I didn't know.
Well, I knew Mac, we were very close personal friends.
It's a hell of a job.
It is, especially.
I'm just about to stop.
Yeah, okay. Wasn't the engineering.
I'll tell you the same thing I told him. He said.
I got 11, ooh, yeah, my mic's on. Okay. Got 11:10, so we're going to go ahead and get started again. I believe we were talking about
Mitigation applications.
mitigation applications and moving into a discussion about how we're going to eat this elephant as far as identifying a mitigation committee or an advisory board. Is that what we're calling this thing?
It's an advisory board, that's
Okay.
right. Yeah, so there's, I mean, sky's the limit on how you want to go about that process. Of course, you could interview, you could narrow it down to a short list and conduct interviews, or go ahead and appoint. That's totally up to you all.
Okay, well, I'm going to open the floor here to discussion amongst the commissioners. Mr. Connor?
Go ahead. I think Mr. Anthony's going to lead off on this thing.
Mr. Simmons?
I seen your hand go out first. Age for beauty.
Oh.
We probably should just kind of narrow it down, because we got 19 people out. And I don't know what we should narrow it down to.
4.
Well.
4? That's fine with me.
Okay, well, I think that's the end state, is to get to 4, but how we get there is the question.
Do you want to make up some rules and stuff? I have no
Well,
idea.
so here's the conversation that I had with Ms. Steinman yesterday. And I said, regardless of how we do this, whether it's an open or a closed meeting, I said, you're going to sit down and have a conversation and interview folks. And I said, whether you do this open or closed, you're going to bring people in a room and you're going to have a conversation with them. And I said, my personal feeling is I just feel like with an issue that is as sensitive as this is, I just felt like it would be to the benefit of everyone involved to have it in the open. Just bring them in here, you standardized list of questions, and whether or not we want to have the entire commission sit on this board, or you want to have 3 or 4 folks, it doesn't make any difference to me. But you line these folks up, you put them in a separate room, bring them in here one at a time, ask your questions, you score them out. You take your top 4 folks, the top 3 become your advisory board, and the bottom person or the 4th ranking person becomes your alternate. Fair enough?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure you could actually conduct interviews in executive session anyway. I mean, you could discuss, but I'm not sure I'd have to look at that, but it doesn't sound like you want to do
You were talking
that.
about getting maybe 3 commissioners.
Yeah, it would, I think the difference is either you do it in a public meeting where all of you are here, or you do 3 commissioners or less, so that you don't have a quorum, so you would just conduct regular interviews, just as if we would do if it were an employee.
Like we've done it numerous times with multiple applications like this. This is people's privacy.
Right.
They did not run and get elected, so they should not be entitled to the same scrutiny as in a public meeting setting. I think the best way to do it is the way we've done it in the past. We'll pick 3 commissioners, let them bring a group of 6 back, or 5, or if the rest of the board wants to only bring 4. And the board can vote on how they want those 4 to line up. And, we've done it like that in the past. It kind of keeps, the ones that's not selected, it keeps it private for them. Because we do appreciate every application here, and we're going to need more applications to fill other positions later on. That's my suggestion. Maybe a panel of 3, run them all through an interview, bring back 6 to the board, or whatever the board decides right now, what they want, and make a decision from there.
Sounds good to me.
So panel of 3 narrows it down to?
That 3 narrow it down. That way that's 3 commissioners. That way the other 3 commissioners and the chairman, can have insight back and forth with 3.
Okay.
2, let them narrow it down, let them bring back a condensed list, let the board make a decision on what they want to do. You can do it one by one, or you can do it as a group, or whatever you want to do.
Do we have volunteers for this panel of 3?
I'll do it.
There's one. There's two. So we have Mr. Newkirk, Mr. Rushing, and Mr. Davis. So everybody in agreement on that? Mr. Simmons, you in agreement on that?
That's fine.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Davis, are you sure you want to take this appointment?
Yes, sir.
Ain't that kind of opposite of what you got going on right now by taking this?
Is that a conflict of interest?
I mean, I don't care one way or the other. I mean, one way with what party or what the other's got going on, but
I tell you what.
this does need to be a wholehearted decision and a good decision made that doesn't look sketchy from the
I
outside.
think that I'm going to respectfully ask that Mr. Davis allow one of our representatives from District 1.
I'll do it.
Okay,
Agreed.
there you go. So we've got Mr. Rushing, Mr. Newkirk, and Mr. Simmons that will make our panel of three decision there. Can you guys get us a list of names together by?
Well, I think if we could be ready to, are we talking about a short list, who we want to
Short list?
interview?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, what you think about number 6?
I'd like to have it no more than 7. 6 would be preferred.
Okay, so we can do this a couple of ways. Y'all can narrow it down to 6 or 7. We can bring it back to the next meeting and y'all can just appoint from that list. If you're wanting to do interviews, the quicker we get to this, the better. I would prefer that we're ready to appoint at the next meeting because on March 1st, I need to start having a manager to just start the process of well registration. We don't have to have it completed by then, but the committee really needs to be in place for that. I realize that's a short turnaround. So I think if you want to interview, we probably need to get a short list by the end of this week and conduct interviews next week. Try to have that ready for approval at the following meeting in March. I do just want to say, because I feel like it's incumbent upon me to tell you that I think that the way Bryan County selected their committee members and the way the plan contemplated, I know I've stated this before, so I'm just throwing it out there again, was to have a well driller, potentially a well driller, potentially someone that is an expert in the field, and then potentially a citizen, just a normal citizen. So just take that, do what you will with it, but I did want to put that out there. But thank you. Yes, if y'all can, instead of emailing me separately and not agreeing with each other, if y'all can come to an agreement on that short list, then we'll set up interviews for you.
So short list by close of business on Friday. Is that doable?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then we can set up interviews. Is that what we're intending to do here?
Yeah, I'll ask Ms. Venus if she'll help me with that process, coordinating all of that. But we'll check with your schedules and the applicant schedules and get all of that set up for you.
And then how are we going to do these interviews? Because if we do this and we're looking at a whole commission, then we're looking at, how are we going to do it?
Now, that's up to you. I interpret it to mean that the 3 that were just
We okay with that?
selected are doing
Three of
the
them-
interviews?
3 of them do interviews?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
All
that's
right.
fine.
Very well then. 3 of them do the interviews and report back. Okay.
So we report back with y'all with 6 people, and then I guess, just like an appointment, anything, Mr. Jeff, that would go into executive session to pick the appointees.
Well, you could discuss it in executive session.
That's right, but yeah.
But you gotta vote on it.
Yeah, vote it in open meeting, but discuss it. Okay.
So we're clear on how we're doing this then?
Yes, sir.
Y'all will conduct interviews and, okay. All right. So next meeting, we will have a list of names, or we will have appointments at our next meeting.
Ready to be approved, that's right.
What else do we owe you today, this work session?
That's it.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
So before we go into executive session, because we will have no further action at the end of this meeting, I do just want to make a reminder for everybody that's still here and for the public that's watching at home on the interwebs. Early voting for the SPLOST starts on the 24th of February, and it'll be here at the elections office. We cannot tell you how to vote publicly, but I will encourage everyone to go out and vote, and just remind everyone that people have gone off to foreign lands and fought for you to have that right to vote, and I encourage you to exercise that right one way or the other, starting on the 24th of February. So with that, we are going to move into executive session. You are welcome to stay outside if you like, but like I said, there will be no action taken after this. We will just adjourn the meeting. So I must now call for a motion to adjourn into executive session in accordance with the provisions OCGA 50-14-3B2 and 5014-3B1B and other applicable laws pursuant to the advice of County Attorney Jeff Akins for the purpose of discussing personnel and real estate matters. Clerk of the Board, Venus Mincy White, Personnel, Statesboro Regional Library Board appointments, and County Attorney Jeff Akins, Real Estate.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.